hey, check that out. So title of this is You Just Committed to Ohio State, right? Because, well, I always try to give it at least 8 to 10 minutes of just straight college football talk from me, while also not necessarily having a real expectation that you stick with the rest of this podcast. But that's cool. Look, I titled this You Just Committed to Ohio State because we saw that Jansen Dunn flipped his silent commit, which is a thing that I had not seen in this amount of time, like ever, because you see the eyes get tweeted out. You see, people getting up just cool about it, right? And then Lincoln comes over the top with, didn't have spring football, but hey, check this out. We still are going to have a good time on days when we traditionally get commits. And then news comes out that Ohio State reached out. It's like, what you doing? And he's like, oh, okay. I didn't know you guys really wanted me like that. Yeah, we want you like that. Well, now back to where we were, right? With Steve Wiltfong flipping his crystal ball from Oklahoma to Ohio State. Now, if you feel like Ohio State is getting all the recruits that you want, that's because you're correct. Because they're putting together the best recruiting class in the history of recruiting classes. Like, quite literally, you just take a look at the numbers. I've done this over the course of the week, so much so that I have Ohio State fans going, are you joining the dark side? No, I'm not. I am very interested in recruiting and in college football. I'm also interested in this thing where Ohio State just seems to be recruiting in a way that I've never seen anybody recruit, particularly in a dead period. And that's what's most remarkable about this. Now, I also need to add in here, I was making jokes about Alabama, and then Alabama apparently watched the videos that I was making and got 2 more commitments in 2 days. So now they're up to 3 in the last 2 days. They picked up a good wide receiver, to great wide receiver, depending on who you want to talk to, yesterday around about 6 o'clock. Adji Howell is every bit of 6'3", 205, and is outstanding after the catch. Now, they need to find a quarterback because Drake May ends up flipping from Alabama to North Carolina. Didn't see that coming. But then again, did we see North Carolina coming at all? I don't think we did. I don't think any of us did. I think that Mac Brown just put a rope up around North Carolina and decided to keep all that great talent in state. And who knew that, 1, Mac Brown had this kind of sway, and 2, that Mac Brown could just show up at North Carolina and start out-recruiting blue bloods. And by blue bloods, I'm really talking about blue bloods in college football, right? And blue bloods in recruiting. More than college football in recruiting, right? Because you look at LSU, they're not even in the top 20. Clemson is doing Clemson stuff, which, is what you expect. Notre Dame is also sitting there in the top 5. Florida's been recruiting its butt off, but then again, Florida is the most talent-rich state in the union when we're talking about football. Georgia is going to be Georgia because they don't even care anymore. They're just coming to get your recruits. But North Carolina, who is North Carolina in football, right? That's been the question all along. North Carolina was once the place where Mac Brown was, but that's before he got Texas job, right? He got Texas job, started recruiting Texas. When he had coordinators, he's always been good. So now he's got coordinators and he's recruiting. North Carolina, I expect to be good, not just this coming year, but next year. And this 21 class is going to be really interesting because the evaluation is going to be all over the board, man, because we don't have any regional camps for these kids to go to, and we probably don't have summer camps for the kids to go to. So kids that would normally use this opportunity to make the leap in the rankings are also having a really hard time just, getting looks. I mean, they're having to send huddle film out to any number of places and any number of coaches. And because it's a dead period, they got to reach out first, right? And then they're not guaranteed to get a response back. All while you watch Ohio State just somehow be able to pull these kids out of thin air. Kids that I thought there was going to be a battle for all the way through the summer, like Tumise Adelie, like Travion Henderson, right? Like Evan Pryor. And now it could be Emeka Ibuka is headed that way, and JT Tuimoloau is headed that way. But if those 2 kids from the state of Washington don't end up at Washington and they end at Ohio State, I think that most of college football recruiting fans are going to go insane. They are not going to know what to do about any of this because all of a sudden, who had Ryan Day out recruiting Urban Meyer? In what universe did you see that coming? That's like Nebula with the Infinity Gauntlet. It just ain't the way that the plot goes. And yet, if you look at the recruiting rankings, you see Kerry Coombs, you see Tony Alford, you see Larry Johnson Sr., my goodness, Al Washington, and on it goes, right? So whether it's the Zoom phone calls, maybe it's the beard that Ryan Day is growing out, or perhaps they're just better at this thing called recruiting through the internet than anybody gave them credit for. Because while we've been talking about Lincoln Riley probably securing 3 very good recruits, the fact of the matter is they're not even in the boat. And for all the folks that want to say it's a long road to recruiting and most of these kids from Ohio State are going to decommit, show me the kids that are committing elsewhere, right? I mean, we have data to show that commitments for the most part stick, right? So let's just go ahead and assume that you lose 3 from this Ohio State class. They're still going to be 50 points clear of anybody else. They're still going to have the best class in college football. And I think they're like a commit away from sewing that title up because they're sitting at like 290 points. Most years it takes about 300 to 310 to win the recruiting national title. Okay? They get close to 330 this year if they do this correctly because they're still the number 1 player out there who seems to be in Ohio State lane. They're still the number 1 wide receiver out there who seems to be in Ohio State lane to go along with 2 dominant running backs at 4-star and 5-star to go along with the best offensive guard in the country in Donovan Jackson. And we could really talk about Jack Sawyer being the best defensive end in the country if you feel that kind of way, but maybe you feel like Corey Foreman deserves that title. You have to wait and see. I think this is really fascinating to think about and to look at from the standpoint of boosters as well, right? Because right now, you're going to have a really difficult time getting people to throw money at your program because of the state of the economy. We're not even through this pandemic yet, and we're already talking about people having to fold up shop and furloughs going everywhere all the time, and we've seen a record number of folks file for unemployment. Also, add to that, if you live in Texas, right, Oklahoma, Louisiana, places where oil is a big part of the economy, you're talking about record lows for barrels of oil. So that money, which is usually boom or bust, right, is very much in the bust aspect of things. So A&M ain't necessarily going to want to shell out for Jimbo Fisher if he does not have together the class that they think he should have, right? Might be actually closer to just folding up their arms and waiting on his contract to run out. And now they're going to look real silly with that 10-year, $75 million contract because they can't buy it out, right? You're also going to look at, I think, group of 5 squads that we thought might have the come up, like Appalachian State, like Boise State, like Memphis, who may not be able to function in the way that we've been accustomed to them functioning. Memphis getting to that Cotton Bowl after winning the American Championship might be the last time they do that for a while, right? So we're going to see a lot of programs just get lopped off basically because of funding. So when Ohio State is able to put together this kind of class and this kind of an atmosphere, you got to believe that most people are going to buy into Ohio State that, 1, weren't already bought into Ohio State, and 2, might have been holding back their money for something else entirely, because what we do know is people really want to win national championships, right? They'll shell out for national championships. They will not go broke, but they'll go close to it because they want their team to be that good. And I think we're really going to find out what people value, right? Like my alma mater, I can't wait to see what the University of Tulsa looks like after all of this, because at one point it's the smallest Division 1A football team or football program in the country based on enrollment, right? It's a private university. It gets funding from the kids that go to this university, not necessarily from the federal government. It doesn't have a whole lot of scholarships like to go around, right? So you really need to win if you're Philip Montgomery to try to get some of those folks to believe in what you're doing, because nobody wants to support a loser, right? People want to give money to people that win. It's one of the reasons why unemployment doesn't work for some folks in certain economic and social atmospheres. It's because you don't want to support anybody that's on their butt, or so you think, right? You want to support somebody that you could see bootstrapping themselves. Thing is, not everybody got bootstraps to pull up. And that's how you're going to figure this out in college football, which is going to make Clemson even more remarkable, right? Because with Clemson being able to be Clemson for the past 5 years and put away a lot of this money we think and be able to pay Dabo Swinney and pay Tony Elliott and pay Brent Venables, right? They also have data to show they're going to be in this thing when college football comes back, right? North Carolina, maybe somebody was thinking that it's time to get out of their football program or bring money back into the basketball program. But Roy Williams not only had a piss poor year, but Mac Brown looks like he's setting up to have a great next 3 years by these recruiting classes. I think that these recruiting rankings are going to have a lot to say about funding in the future is what I'm saying, right? You need to be busting your butt right now if you're a college football coach recruiting more than you ever have, basically to ensure that you still have the same amount of money that you had last year for the next 3 years, right? Garrett Nussmeier, I think, is an LSU lean, and, we got 100% of Crystal Ball said he's headed that way. But Ed Orgeron needs to make sure that that kid gets in the boat sooner rather than later so you can show this stuff to the folks that give money to the program, right? Not to say that Louisiana is ever going to fold their football team. That just ain't what it's going to be. But talking about renovations, talk about how much money you want to put into the locker rooms, how much money you want to put into strength and conditioning facilities, how much money you put in the recruiting budget. All of this affects right now based entirely on what you're able to do. And what you're able to do right now is recruit. You can't even guarantee that you're going to play college football in 2020. You can't. You can guarantee putting together a top 5 recruiting class, because even in a dead period, you can recruit, and they are recruiting. And you're seeing people flex their digital muscle, and you're seeing people really dig deep into their digital content creator well, right? I think folks like Zach Heffley at Oklahoma are proving their worth every single day, just with the content that they're able to produce and the way that they're able to make the university look good on the Twitters, right? We saw Lincoln Riley walking through his shoes just yesterday, right? Doing that sort of stuff and being able to flip bad video into something that's worthwhile is a skill I possess and a skill that Heffley possesses. But now we're finding out Nick Saban not having a Snapchat account, just getting an Instagram account, all these things are coming back to bite him, right? Just getting your email, yeah, that's a problem. You know how many people just have an email for stuff? Like, how do you not have an email account? Oh, that's right. You don't involve yourself in, subscription models for this, subscription models for that. Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, Kick. What else we got in here? What am I on? Xbox, PS4, Nintendo Switch. All these ways of which you could use to communicate with the kids. Just doesn't do it.